everyone, welcome back to Clat Possible. Today in the Law News series, we are going to discuss a very important issue. It's about the recent Air India crash that took place near Ahmedabad, India. We are going to analyze this situation from the perspective of law and legal liabilities and strict liability, and what exactly is the law on aviation, and what is the aviation liability, what is the liability of crash. The airline in terms of crash or any negligence which is otherwise proven. ठीक है, तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बनता है टॉपिक, बिकॉज वी ऑफन स्टडी अबाउट स्ट्रिक्ट लाइबिलिटी, वी स्टडी अबाउट वाइकेरियस लाइबिलिटी and other forms of liability which is related to aviation liability, right? So first thing is that all of you are aware of the tragedy of Air India, that is Boeing 787, and जिसमें over 260 people were killed in the Ahmedabad. Now there are certain laws that surround the situation, and we will understand which law will be applicable in this case. So first of all, we have Montreal Convention 1999, which talks about international flight liability. Now, since this flight was bound to UK, right, London, and therefore this convention will be applicable. This is not applicable on domestic flights because it was an international flight. So yes, this convention will be applicable. And this convention के अंदर क्या होता है, that we will understand just in a while. Then we have Carriage by Air Act 1972. This is a usual law that is applicable, and इसको amend किया था 2009 के अंदर to adopt the Montreal rules. Now we have standard tort law that we study in classes also. We study particularly about negligence as a tort and wrongful death or even nuisance as a tort. Okay, so if you have taken tort classes, you would already be aware of these concepts. If you have not yet studied torts, then wait for it. The same topics will be taught to you in the classes very well. Now then, apart from tort law, now this is the uncodified law. We have one more act, which is Aircraft Act 1934. We have Aircraft Rules 1937. Then we have Civil Aviation Requirements, that is CARs, which is issued by the DGCA, that is Director General of Civil Aviation. And in the end, we also will discuss insurance and consumer protection laws. So you see, one Air India crash attracts so many legal provisions. Okay, so कौन से provision में क्या है, we will understand that, because this potentially can be a passage in your legal section. I told you anything which is in news or which is in controversy, especially which may have legal dispute, can be potentially your passage in the exam. Now we'll look at these laws one by one. If you want, you can also make notes wherever you think there is a requirement. Now, first is Montreal Convention, which is applicable on this crash, because I told you the flight was an international flight and it was going to London. So, what are the particular articles here? You can see Article 17 of the Montreal Convention, Article 21, and which has the scope of covering death or bodily injury to passengers, baggage, or even cargo, which is exactly the case here, right? Which is exactly the case here. All the passengers who were in this flight, since only one person has survived, so he would be covered under bodily injury, and the rest of the people would be able to claim, their families would be able to claim within the scope of death of the passenger, and of course death, loss of baggage and injury to the luggage. Yeah. Now, what is it based on? First is strict liability. If you have already read torts, you would know what is a strict liability. Strict liability simply means liability even without fault. It's called no fault liability. That is, even when the defendant has not done anything wrong, even if the defendant might have taken best possible care, still he may be liable. That's called strict liability. तो स्ट्रिक्ट लाइबिलिटी के अंदर ये बोलना कोई डिफेंस नहीं होता that I have taken good care, I have taken best care, or I was not negligent at all. This is not a defense, right? So strict liability इसकी है 1.5 crore per passenger. This is very important for us to understand कि अगर कोई इंटरनेशनल प्लेन क्रैश होता है तो 1.4 CR per passenger is the strict liability, मतलब वो तो आनी ही आनी है. That is for sure. That is not dependent on negligence of the carrier or the pilot or anything else. So in this case, maybe you must have seen that the Air India has already announced 1 CR per passenger already. Okay. Now this is up to, so this is the maximum that can be granted, and in this case 1 CR per person per passenger has already been granted, so it's fine, comes within the limit of strict liability. अगर इसके ऊपर जाना है, if this cap has to be crossed, then you can claim compensation only when you are able to prove that the aircraft was being operated negligently. either उसमें जो एयरलाइन है उसका नेग्लिजेंस होगा या फिर ऑपरेटर्स का होगा या some sort of negligence you will have to establish. Otherwise, your compensation is limited to 1 CR only. Now, ये भी इसमें कवर होता है incidents relating to on board during embarking disembarking. तो खैर because this flight literally crashed, so ये वाला clause यहाँ पर applicable नहीं होगा, but it is actually an extension of the liability. अभी डोमेस्टिक लॉ में किससे कवर होगा? एयर एक्ट हमारे पास है 1972 का, जिसको अमेंड भी किया जा चुका है, और डोमेस्टिक फ्लाइट्स पर ये अप्लाई करता है. सो नेचुरली इंटरनेशनल फ्लाइट पर भी अप्लाई करेगा. एक इंटरनेशनल लॉ विल अप्लाई इवन ऑन डोमेस्टिक फ्लाइट, बट डोमेस्टिक लॉ विल नॉट अप्लाई ऑन इंटरनेशनल फ्लाइट. यू टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट, राइट? How and what you can expect in Clat based on this, based on the aviation law, there may be combined statutory interpretation of domestic and international law and tort principles. I just told you कि अगर इंटरनेशनल फ्लाइट है तो उसमें इंटरनेशनल लॉ के साथ साथ डोमेस्टिक लॉ भी एप्लीकेबल होता है, बट अगर केवल डोमेस्टिक फ्लाइट है तो उसमें इंटरनेशनल लॉ एप्लीकेबल नहीं होगा. ओनली द डोमेस्टिक लॉ कुड बी एप्लीकेबल, राइट? तो एक तो यू कैन बी टेस्टेड फ्रॉम द इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी questions, that is a combination of statutory interpretation and tort principles. Tort principles मतलब negligence हो सकता है, it could be nuisance, it could be strict liability, and even vicarious liability for that matter. So ये जो कुछ legal terms हैं, you will have to focus more on these terms. I just said wrongful death is also part of it, and third party risk, which I will just explain in a while. It's related to the concept of insurance, where I get an insurance from a company and the company protects me from any claims that might arise against me from a third party. Okay. So this is about the Montreal Convention, which is definitely applicable in this case. And based on this only, the 1 CR per passenger compensation has already been announced. If you want to go beyond this, if any passenger wants to claim more than this, then there has to be a clear proof or establishment of negligence on the part of Air India. I hope things are clear till here. अगर इसमें कोई भी डाउट है, कोई क्वेश्चन है, तो प्लीज पोस्ट इट ऑन द कमेंट बॉक्स एंड आई आंसर इट लेटर ऑन. You can post any query that you might have from Montreal Convention. Now, beyond the convention, like ground victims and tort law, now this is very essential point for us to discover, that people who were not passengers in the plane, right? So the people who have died belong to two categories. One category is of the passengers who were sitting in the plane, and the other is the people who were on the ground, students from the hostel, from the college, and other people who were on the ground who died because of the crash. So the question is that does the Montreal Convention only apply to passenger liability, or even goes beyond to cover the liability of those who were on ground, who were not even passengers, right? So उसके ऊपर क्या law है वो देख लेते हैं. यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है? Collateral damage is not covered by Montreal Convention. So this is important for us to understand कि जो Montreal Convention है वो केवल passenger liability की बात करता है, that is victims on grounds, जैसे कि जो hostel के residents थे या जो property का damage हुआ है, that entire hostel building, the mess of the college and other surrounding areas were damaged, तो वो इस convention के scope से बाहर चला जाता है, यानी कि collateral damage cover नहीं. So the people who died on ground, the students of the medical college, they will not be able to recover compensation from the airline carrier under Montreal Convention. But does it mean that they will not be able to claim any compensation? No. The answer is clearly no. उनकी liability tort के अंदर fix हो जाएगी, but not under the convention, right? अब applicable laws, I said tort law. So इसके अंदर ये वाली liability cover हो जाएगी collateral damage की, passenger चाहे non passenger दोनों इसमें cover हो जाएगा. There is action for negligence, wrongful death, or fatal accidents and nuisance, already explained. Motor vehicle acts can sometimes be used for structural compensation, although it is not directly applicable, but it is persuasive. So, motor vehicle act is any, it covers any accident, any damage arising out of the use of a motor vehicle. ठीक है, तो ये यहाँ पर directly applicable होगा नहीं because we have enough laws already. But अगर in case we did not have a law specifically for aviation liability, then this could have been used, right? But yes, this is definitely in addition to what we have. We also have Consumer Protection Act (CPA). यानी कि अगर हम ये प्रूव कर देते हैं कि जो एयर इंडिया है उनकी सर्विस में कोई डेफिशिएंसी है, if their services were of substandard nature, either in terms of flight management or flight operations or flight maintenance or whatever, ठीक है, कोई भी गलती अगर हम उनकी प्रूव कर देते हैं तो that will also be a part of Consumer Protection Act because passenger in the end is a consumer. Passenger in the end is a consumer and airline is a service provider. So even a consumer litigation will arise. But उसके लिए हमें प्रूव करना पड़ेगा that there was fault on the part of Air India. So this is the conclusion that victims on ground can claim under general law for breach of duty of care or negligent conduct by airline operator, but not under the Montreal Convention. I hope it is clear. See, there is a good chance that you might get this passage because it's a recent incident and a huge incident having strong impact on all the people, especially in India and even beyond. So this could be a high chance. And since the law relating to this has not been discussed anywhere, so it becomes even more important for you to go through this liability. Okay? कोई question है तो you can post in the comment box. Now, what is the insurance-related laws, institutional liability, and Indian framework? So, first of all, is the aircraft damage, which is approximately said to be 1.1400 crore, and that is covered under the aviation insurance, right? So, the cost of the aircraft, which is completely damaged, will be recovered by the respective insurance company under the aviation insurance. That's not an issue. What is the duty on the part of the operator, that is Air India? The DGCA, that is the Director General for Civil Aviation, there is a requirement mandate for SOP, standard operating procedures. It puts a legal obligation on the airline to follow certain things, to make sure that certain things are done by them in order to avoid any crash or damage. So first is maintenance of the aircraft, which is definitely there, which includes the entire repairing and mechanism of the aircraft. We have pilot training here, response to emergency calls, and even third party risk. ये ऑपरेटर के पार्ट पर लीगल ड्यूटी इंपोज की है डीजीसीए ने. उसका इंप्लीकेशन क्या होगा कि जो अर्जेंट रिव्यू है एविएशन लायबिलिटी कैप्स का वो हम कर सकते हैं, ठीक है, क्योंकि सी इट इज ऑलवेज Montreal Convention is international law, and if we incorporate that law into domestic law, it becomes a binding force of law for us also. So the Indian government is free. In fact, it has a discretion to make its own law relating to aviation liability. So it will be actually a better situation if we have a well-defined liability, even the domestic laws. So yes, there could be questions relating to this. That what is the gap in the current law? What is the lacuna in the current law? How you can overcome that? What would you suggest to the parliament? What suggestions can be made to the parliament to better improve the existing law on aviation liability? ठीक है. Do we also need a specialized aviation accident tribunal? Questions like this also can appear sometimes, where you may be asked to find out whether there is a specialized tribunal, that is specialized court, which will decide this liability. So currently we don't have any court like this, but yes, in future we might have one, or we might just create one specifically for one purpose. There are certain Supreme Court precedents like mentioned here, liability, Bahera and Budul Shah, जिसके अंदर public law compensation की बात हुई है, that is compensation to public at large. Compensation to public at large. So whenever any nuisance is carried out, which is actually a nuisance against a lot of people of the society, a lot of general members of the society, so public law can be applicable. And the fact that the people who died on the ground or who were injured on the ground or whose property was damaged on the ground, they will be able to claim compensation even as per the public law policy. That includes damage caused due to nuisance committed in public areas. I hope things are clear to you. See, these are all possible areas of questions. Your passage can be based on this, and there could be possible areas of questioning from different perspectives. So, no need to retain anything, no need to memorize anything. I told you already. Just focus on understanding and comprehending the law. If you focus on learning the law, then you will never achieve that. The purpose is not achieved actually. You have to focus on better comprehension of law. What does the law say? What is the limit of the law? Like I said, Montreal Convention has a limit, but also has an advantage, but that advantage is limited, right? तो ये सब आपको समझना होगा पैसेज के अंदर whenever you get passages on this. Okay? And strict liability I've already explained. Strict liability के अंदर fault proof करने की जरूरत नहीं होती. So let me just summarize what is the liability in the present case. First is every passenger has already been awarded compensation of 1 CR per passenger, his family. And if they want to go beyond this, anybody who claims more than this compensation, they will have to establish clear negligence on the part of the carrier, which is Air India, or the government of India, of course, because that is also part of its combination of both the entities. So किसी एक की negligence establish करनी होगी. Number 2 is there is no liability under Montreal Convention for the people on the ground, but that liability is covered by the tort law. So the general tort law of negligence, if there is a legal duty to take care, if there is a breach of duty resulting in damage to somebody, then the defendant can be liable for negligence, and he is liable to pay compensation for the damage that has been caused to the other party for his negligence, right? तो जो मॉन्ट्रियल कन्वेंशन के अंदर इंक्लूडेड नहीं है, that will be covered within tort law. There is no problem with that. We have negligence principles, strict liability principles, and even principles of nuisance. So this is the overall analysis of legal liability. I would also suggest that you should go and read more about aviation liability in general. Just go and Google it. Just read more about aviation liability. Read some cases about liabilities that have arisen in the past and how the law has responded to that. Read more about aviation sector so that you will get more clarity on application of law and the operator's liability. Okay, because there is a strong chance that this could be a potential passage into examination. If you have still any questions, just let me know. For Clat, I already said that you need to focus on the interdisciplinary approach of tort and the convention. That is international law and domestic law का एक interplay आपको ऐसा मिल सकता है. So in that you will have to clearly identify किस law की क्या limit है, किस law का क्या scope है. ठीक है? Generally questions scope वाले part से ही बन सकते हैं. But yeah, it can be very well related to even tort law. All right. So that is it from my side. Thank you so much. Read more about this topic, and I'll keep coming up with more interesting, important, and relevant legal topics for your examination. Thank you so much.